Hello, how's it going? Hope everybody can see me okay here. I'm gonna try to make
See me
sure.
okay here? I'm gonna try to.
There we go. Okay. Can anybody just real quick? I'm Robin Rosado here at Top Speed Golf. I'm obviously don't normally do this. I'm just subbing in for Quentin here, and so I just want to make sure everybody who is here can hear me. If you can kind of just give me a hello. Hi, hey Dan, how's it going? All right, great. So glad everyone can hear me. Thank you so much for trusting me here with the office hours. As again, Quinn is on vacation. Let me just close my office door really quick. Okay, so as you know, Quentin, I don't normally do these here. So if we what I normally do for Top Speed is I am hosting a lot of the in-person lessons for Top Speed, and I'm doing a lot of clinics, which clinic season is beginning to happen here in Orlando very soon. So we just sold our first distance clinic, and we're going to be launching the rest of our distance clinics here to sell within the next week. So I'd love to see you guys in one of those. And of course, if you want to come in for any clinics or any lessons, please go and shoot me an email, robin@topspeedgolf.com. And of course, if you are looking to do any online lessons, of course, shoot me an email, robin@topspeedgolf.com. So why don't I just go ahead and get started on several videos that are in here already, or several questions that are in here already. Starting with Andre. Hi, can you please give your opinion on shaft lean for lower club speed golfers? Most YouTube videos say shaft lean is essential, but I can find that it can also mean a loss of carry distance when we de-loft the club if the club head speed isn't there. What do you think? Yeah, it's actually a fantastic question because it is a factor, right? So, let's kind of look at a couple of things here, Andre. So let's say we're creating shaft lean and we're doing that, I don't know, let's say somewhere between 10 to 15 degrees of shaft lean. That tour players are going to be somewhere in that range. So they're de-lofting the face about 30% of the loft. And of course, they're hitting down on it. Let's say shorter iron is going to be about 4.5 degrees to 5 degrees, let's say. So that is going to get the ball launching lower. If you're not swinging fast, so then of course the ball speed is a factor to apexing up and getting higher. So if you're not swinging fast enough, yes, your carry distance, the ball in essence is going to go fly lower without it having enough speed, like a jet, right, to go up and then get higher. So with that being said, it's we'll never say don't de-loft the face as much, like don't get as much shaft lane. But some of what I'm saying there, Andre, is that, like where for you, where obviously we don't want to flip our hands, right? That's definitely not the case. But for you, you want to have maybe more of, what would be more of a roll release. Let's say if you are swinging, pretty slow, like you have to swing pretty darn slow. And well, there's other factors too, right? So where equipment wise, that's actually, now I'm getting into that there. It's a factor too. You can still generate shaft lean, but the kick point of a certain shaft, let's say you're now at graphite here, and the kick point is going to launch it to where it can launch a little bit higher. Of course, now with equipment these days, or club faces itself are a lot hotter. So there's a lot of there's some factors now in this day and age in golf where I would say, get fitted, still generate shaft lane, get fitted, and get you something that can still launch it without sacrificing you potentially flipping your hands to add loft to the face. And then the second part, what I was going on, which I wouldn't necessarily go with this route, is not generating, not having as much shaft lane as you would a tour player with 15 degrees of shaft lane and hitting down on it as much, right? And so you have your choices there, Andre. But and then, of course, the third thing is to dive through the 20-minute distance fix or attend a distance clinic and increase your club head speed. But those are your options there when it comes to slower swing speed players and de-loft in the face. So hopefully that helps you out there a little bit. But that's a fantastic question. I think that was a great one there. Okay. Next question there, and please feel free if I didn't answer it. If you feel like that wasn't enough, go ahead and send me another question there. Jim P, any advice on getting my left arm straight as I know it's affecting my power. I'm only 5'8", T-Rex arms. I'm 68 years old, still recovering from stroke. Oh, sorry to hear that. That left side weaker than my right. I've gotten into bad habit with. Oop, sorry, got a phone call and it clicked onto my thing here. Um, Straight that my left side's weaker and the club head speed I've managed to increase by watching the videos here, 75 to 82. Good. So really quick there, Jim, when I'll tell you this, you don't necessarily now if you're thinking about your lead arm into the release, that's a little bit different, right? When we're coming into it and you do see a little bit of a chicken wing, you do see that. If that's happening in your release there, Jim, then that's a different story. And it's still a factor of rotation. So, of course, we talk about that in a straight line release. And I'll speak more to that. The other side of that, if that's happening more at the very top of the swing, where you're seeing the left wrist or left elbow break down at the very top, you know, we're not really concerned so much on that, but that is a factor again on rotation as well. So I'll talk to backswing and I'll talk to release first, or Jim. So in the backswing, when we see left arm break down, typically what happens there is that the shoulders are not rotating enough. We're not having enough torso rotation. We're not having enough hip rotation in the backswing. So not enough turn, to put it simply. And so what happens there is you're trying to take the club further back, but if you're only turning, let's say 70 degrees of your shoulder turn in your backswing, then the arms are just going to have to break down in order for that club to go farther back. Okay, so the fix there, of course, is like we talk about in the power turn series and the 20-minute distance fix, of course, is making sure that we are turning past at least 90-degree shoulder turn to maintain that left arm straighter. But again, it's not a necessity. It's not, average on the PGA Tour is about a 20% bend into that lead arm in the backswing. So it's not a necessity so much in the backswing. Now, in the follow through, when you do see the left arm or lead arm break down on you, again, if I'm swinging this way and if I'm seeing this in the release, that is usually a product of a flip. And again, like arms are beating the body and we're not rotating our body open and out of the way. So again, where in the downswing, we're rotating our hips open here and we're rotating our core open to get to that straight line release. I mean, to put it simply there, Jim, yes, without a doubt, dive through the straight line release series. That's going to answer probably a lot of your questions if you go through all those drills and go through all those videos for sure. But again, the major factor to where seeing arms bend is the lack of rotation of the hips and core and chest in the downswing. Number one, or number two, sequencing, which kind of speaks to the same deal there, where your sequencing is off, meaning that upper body again is starting your downswing, kind of the old coming over the top, old school saying there, or your sequencing is off where lower body isn't truly starting the downswing early enough, like you're throwing a ball, hips are opening, then torso's opening, and then of course you're allowing everything to release more out there in front. So rotation's a key factor into that there, Jim. No doubt about that. Okay, so I hope I answered your question there. Let's go next one here. Jeff L. I hit my driver pretty well, but I like some tips for a 2-iron. Awesome. Are those more of a challenge to hit versus a driver, or is a 2-iron a safer bet? Well, I mean, it is technically a little bit easier it's more forgiving. A driver actually on that end is more forgiving than a 2-iron, because a 2-iron is going to be, such a smaller head. There's not as much MOI for forgiveness of off-centered hits. Excuse me. The sweet spot's a lot smaller there. Yeah, 2-iron, I guess off the tee, you can tee it up a little bit to help you out. So, on paper, or what the world says, I guess you can say, is a 2-iron is definitely a lot harder to hit than a driver. Now, even a miss it with a 2-iron, now we're going back to the MOI effect, right? If you're swinging fast, let's hypothetically say you're swinging at 110 miles per hour, then your miss hits and then the face angle and path angle, if those are off, though, that's going to create the ball to move more offline than someone swinging at 80 miles per hour, just because of sheer swing speed. So to put it simply, if you're swinging fast, technically a 2 iron, even on miss hits, a 2 iron now will have less dispersion because of the less, not as big of a head and the sweet spot and all that kind of stuff. So a fade with a driver is going to be more drastic than a fade in a 2 iron or a block with a 2 iron. So it's all really relative, right? I would say if you're playing 2 iron right now, that you're a pretty good player there, Jeff. And I would assume that swing speed is up because again, these days loft, right? It's a factor of loft. So I wouldn't I wouldn't be playing a 2 iron if you're swinging less than 90 miles per hour with the driver. To put it simply, it's not going to give you enough carry distance because the loft is too low. I would even a 3 iron these days, like the loft is, if you're swinging less than 90 miles per hour with a driver, a 2 iron is not going to be, or even potentially now 3 iron is not going to be enough loft for you to actually get carry. So then your long all 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 iron are going the exact same distance because you're not getting to what Andre was talking about before. You're not getting the apexing up higher. So it's all relative to that. So if you are, then again, go to hybrid so that you can get actually carry distance now at that point. But yeah, 2 iron is going to be straighter in a way. Driver is easier to hit off contact. So you kind of have your 2 miss. And then at that point, it becomes their draft to what, when you're sitting up to, again, for better players, it's like what feels good in the hands, what looks good when you're putting the club down on the ground. Then it's a factor, it's a mental factor, right? What's going to put you in the middle of the fairway under pressure type thing, when it really, really counts. So um, if I was super nervous, this is me personally. I don't know why I'm going on this path here, but if I was super nervous, I probably would hit. It's amazing enough. I probably would hit 2 iron, only because I know I can have my probability for me. I know I can hit it somewhere in the middle of the fairway. Well, for me personally, if I'm super 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 nervous, I have a tendency to block it right. And of course, then the counterbalance to that is then to overhook the golf ball from there if I'm like really, really, really nervous. So it's all a factor of knowing your game too, I guess. Cool. All right, Bill W. Let's go take a look here. If you are going for a strong grip, where on the club would the lead thumb be? On the side of the shaft or on top of the closer first finger? It's going to be more built to this side, to put it simply. Not, I mean, yes, even if you're slightly weak, it's going to be more even still to the side, but slightly stronger grip. You're going to have that. If I'm looking here, the grip, if this is my grip here, then my thumb would be just a little bit on the side, creating a more three-finger grip in the left hand, but vice versa in the right hand. That right thumb would be on the left side of the grip there, creating so that the right hand would be also strong there as well. So yeah, I don't really ever want it more down the middle of the grip line because that kind of creates a little bit of instability, and we don't want that. Creates usually radial deviation, instability in the wrist. So we want to have that good stability, and it helps come into the ball with left wrist bowed coming into contact there and creating a lot of shaft length. So hopefully that makes sense there, Bill. The great question though, of course. Keep going here. Not a lot of questions in here. You guys are keeping it easy for me here today. All right, Dan. So shaftling question from Andre. At 80-ish for a lot of irons, is that fast enough? Yeah, I feel like the ball is flying good, but not sure how much shaftling I'm getting. At 80 miles per hour with an iron, yeah, that is pretty good. Put that in perspective here, Dan. Average on the PGA Tour with the 7 iron is going to be 91 or 93 miles per hour. Yeah, so average on the PGA Tour with the 7 iron is going to be about 91-ish miles per hour. So to put it simply, if you're in the 80s with an iron, now this is, I'm talking more to an iron here. If you're in the 80s with an iron, that's pretty darn good. And you can almost get as much shaft length as you would with PGA Tour players, and it won't sacrifice your carry distance, to put it simply. Again, same deal there, though. Equipment is so advanced these days that, kick points on shafts, the variations on shafts, what used to feel really what's irregular now can be a little bit more stiff towards the tip, and what's stiff can be more regular down towards the tip. The weight of it, and the especially when you get to now with the club heads these days, between PXGs, not to well, every major brand has a set of irons that have a very hot face. So that's going to create more ball speed. So the hotter the face, more ball speed. Of course, the ball's traveling farther out, apexing higher. So there is that factor there, Dan, of again the makeup of the club, or with that and the shaft. And by the way, just to kind of go on a side note here, depending on where you are in your game, I will give you that. If you're a brand new beginner, not really necessity to go get fitted for, go get fitted at a True Spec or a Club Champion or anything like that. You can go to the Play Against Sports down the road and pick up a used set of clubs, and you'll be fine as long as it's nothing crazy, right? But if you're at a point where you're playing consistently, a few times, or hitting balls a few times a week, I would say that, or playing a few times a week. You are with your swing that where there's no major, let's say hypothetically, you used to be way over the top and now you've come to where you're more shallow, more neutral playing. Like those are drastic changes. So if you're at a point in your swing where you don't have to make a drastic change, if you're just flipping a little bit, that's fine. Well, if you're flipping majorly, they'll fit you to a club that's going to deal off the face more. But if you don't have major changes that need to happen, and we all want to be perfect in this game, but if you know how to make good solid contact, then I would say 100% get fitted for clubs, like custom fitted for clubs. It's such a game changer in the game of golf these days. I had a client of mine. He's in he used to play professionally. Now he's an amateur these days, and he can swing very fast in the mid 120s consistently, and he never really got fitted for his driver. So he went into a Club Champion and got fitted for his driver, and they did the new stealth driver for him, and they went shafts, all this kind of stuff, all kind of hitting a ton of balls. And now he sent me some statistics. He's literally carrying the ball almost 20 yards farther. And then when I was there, I went to the fitting just from the same head and changed out the shaft. There were ones that are going 10 yards further on carry, and some were going 5 yards further. So there's so much to this game when it comes to an equipment standpoint that it really does make a difference. But I would say, again, to your point, where it's, where you are in your swing, I will go get fitted even if you're not swinging 100 miles per hour. 80 miles per hour is still fine. Definitely go get fitted. Highly recommend it. But yeah, Dan, hopefully that makes sense that answer your question there as far as if you're in the 80s. That was a very long answer to your question. But again, always I'll kind of go on this so you can kind of be a student yourself on when you're practicing. So if your ball flight, it doesn't matter necessarily how fast you're swinging or how slow you're swinging. If your ball flight with a regular iron, not a wedge, a regular iron, and the ball flight's going more like this, and you're seeing more of a loopy lobby, you don't have the shooting off the face. It really doesn't matter how fast you swing at that point. You can tell when the ball's shooting and when the ball is kind of lobbing in the air, then that means there's a high chance that you're flipping if the ball is going more like just a rounded out ball flight, and it doesn't have like a sound to it, right? It doesn't have that flight where it initially takes off lower and then apex is and getting higher there. So it's a great point to understand that, because you can still hit it solid and catch and hit it straight while flipping your hands and the ball just going whoop, but you're sacrificing a lot of potential distance. You're relying a lot on timing. If your timing is good with that flip, so when you take like a couple of weeks off, you go on vacation or what have you, and don't touch your club for 2 weeks to 2 to 3, 4 weeks, then you'll notice it's hard to get that timing right. You catch it thin, you catch it chunky. So it's always really important that you come into it with a lot of shaftling no matter what. You always, dive through things that we talk about in the compression line series. I was talking with, this is a few years ago, with Tommy Fleetwood, and I kind of asked him, what is it that when you're struggling, what do you always go back to? And struggling is relative for those guys, right? Like what, your ball striking or your ball flight, or even your ball flight, let's say it's not, your swing's not where you want it. And he always says, I always focus on impact. I always make sure that I'm not getting too handsy there at impact. And that's consistent. So I heard that with Rory McIlroy recently. I was talking with he's on the uh, web.com tour or the Corn Ferry tour. Goodness gracious, his name is James Nicholson, and he is saying that even for him as pure as a swing, all these guys are making sure they're not getting too handsy down the ball, and they know when the ball is moving too much and their contact isn't quite as pure that they're just getting their handsy and potentially flipping or what have you. So you always, always, always want to make sure you're coming into it with as much shaft lane. I'll tell you this too. This is actually a great point here, Dan, and Andre too. I've never met an amateur, and I've given thousands of lessons over the years, and I've never seen an amateur generate as much shaft lane as a PGA Tour player. Now it's relative. Like I was telling you, this guy who's high level. So let's, if you're a scratch player, that might be a little different. But I've never seen an amateur golfer, and that's usually categorized about a 14 handicap. Your standard golfer, average golfer. I've never seen anybody get as much shaft lane there impact or enough shaft lane there impact, and not nearly as much as a PGA Tour player. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like the feel versus real. You can't over exaggerate that. Again, as long as you make sure that you are rotating your hips open there in the downswing. Okay. So last part here is, oh, Dan, here he goes. I have some, sorry, my phone keeps ringing here. I have some Cobra King oversized irons lifted as offset. Any idea what that does? As to your comments, I feel like I'm hitting it good, not high enough in it, though sometimes not high enough. That's actually surprising, because those are, when they're offset like that. Well, offset, generally wants to get the face closing, right? So if you have them offset, you're going to be de-lofting. Well, it helps you de-loft the face. So to your point there, Dan, it's, there's a chance that it's all in the makeup in the club, but there's a high chance that your swing, if you're in the 80s, going back to what you're saying there before, if you're swinging in the 80s with your irons and you've been working on shaft lean or you're generating enough shaft lean, well, and I say enough, I'm saying about even 5 degrees is enough. Those irons, even though there might be oversized, and but because of the offset on them, they might be wanting to close too much, and then that offset helps you create shaft lane. So now at this point, with the increase of shaft lane of the offset, and you're trying to create shaft lane yourself like you should, and then the face is, the face is also with the offset is also de-lofted slightly, then it could be that, they're just, you don't need them. Honestly, you don't need the offset in those irons, or minimal offset. I do know kind of those King Cobra, oversized irons with the offset. Like I think, again, relatively, I definitely wouldn't put anyone less than a 15 handicap in them, right? And then if you're swinging 80 miles per hour, 80-ish miles per hour with your irons, I think that's actually, to be honest with you, and maybe not as good an excuse. You can go to your accountant, whoever that is in your household. You can always go to them and say, hey, Robin said that I need to upgrade on my clubs. And I think so too. I think your game is, it sounds like just from what you've told me there, Dan, I think your game is far beyond an offset, oversized King Cobra iron. We don't, obviously we're ping guys here. So I'm always going to recommend ping first, but there's a lot out there. There's a lot of great out there, but again, always recommend getting fitted for clubs for sure there, Dan. So I was actually, just in case I had this, and again, anybody who's on right now, please feel free to ask as many questions as you like as you keep going forward. We got about 30 minutes on here, so I'll just keep chatting away until someone asks a question. But going back to what I was saying before, excuse me, I take a little sip here. Going to what I was saying before, that there's not enough, amateurs don't generate enough shaft lane there impact. And the main reason why is because a lot of amateurs are not rotating their hips open in the downswing enough to get shaft lane. So then the counterbalance is when you stop rotating or don't rotate your hips open enough in the way down, or your sequencing is off, lower body isn't starting the downswing early enough, then in order for you to hit the ball straight, well, you've got to get the face square. And so, when you do that, you've got to throw your hands at it, and you've got to kind of flip your hands or roll them over quite aggressively, relying on that timing. So that's why I always, and again, going back to what I've seen over the years of giving so many lessons is that rotation, it's almost like one of those things I maybe can think of off the top of my head, less than 10 people who've rotated enough or over rotated their hips open there on the way down as an amateur. So always making sure you're working on being athletic with your downswing, being athletic with your weight shift to your lead side, your hips rotating open as if you're throwing a ball, getting this rotation here. It's the same sequencing as if you're if throwing a baseball these days is the exact same sequencing. The same sequencing as a quarterback. Quarterback's drawing back, and then they're trying to get this. That's why you see a lot of these, like who was it, Dak Shepard, and all these like quarterbacks are doing this separation drill with the hips, and because they need that for them it's a lot on power really, but for us it's a matter of sequencing. It's the exact same thing. So being athletic with the downswing is a huge factor into generating shaft lean. You do have to, if you struggle with that, by the way, if you struggle, let's say getting handsy at the ball and or flipping, and you know that you're not rotating open, well, rotating open is just not going to be the cure and the fix. You have to work on those two things at virtually the exact same time. So you have to work on making sure you are rotating open. You have to make sure that you are coming into the ball with a lot of shaft lean. Drills. Unfortunately, I don't have a club in here. We just moved into this house, so I'm still not even fully settled in my office here. But you have to, like the split grip drill. That's what I was saying there. Where you grab the club like you normally would, grab the with your trail hand, grab the club here by the metal, and rotate the body open, and you'll feel with that split grip drill, it forces that club head to stay behind you, and it forces you, not to release the club early. That's a great drill to kind of over exaggerate the motion of hands coming way, way, way ahead as you rotate the lower body open and out of the way. So again, two major things there. If you're working on shaft lean, you're working on trying to compress the ball, hit the ball more solid, right? You want to get, hands are ahead. Major, major, major factor into that is making sure you're rotating those hips open on the way down. All right. So, and you do have to work on them at the same time. That's a couple questions in here, or one from Gene. What do you think about backswing position at shaft parallel P2 based on the biomechanics such as too far inside or too far outside? Fantastic question there, Gene. Ideally, right, everyone, especially these days, right, everyone is promoting the club. So what Gene's asking is when he's taking the club head back here, you're not, let's say if I'm here, you're not trying to work that club too far to the inside here or too far outside. Let's think of like Matt Wolf is like a major over exaggeration of that, right? He's way outside, and then he kind of uses that momentum to really shallow it out. And then you got guys who are like, perfect. Adam Scott, Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, where the club is, roughly right parallel to the ground. I'll tell you this here, Gene. You're not going to see any tour player, well, maybe, obviously you can't go extreme and say 100%, but you're not going to see many of the top tour players out there where that club head itself in relation to, let's again call your same position two where club's parallel to the ground. You're not going to see any tour players with the club's inside. So if I'm hitting the ball in this direction here, you're not going to see many players where the club goes inside and the button the club is pointing to what would be my right. Okay. The reason being is that when that club works too far inside, that momentum just from sheer force of the club head moving this way, momentum going this way, the club, that sheer momentum wants to work the club back out. So maybe you don't come over the top, but then of course, if you're going inside, then we're throwing the club out. So i.e. early release or potential flip. So there's two factors that can cause when the club goes inside. That's why you don't, when you hear people say, oh, I'm trying to swing in to out. Actually, Clay just did a video. Oh no, we're about to launch it. I don't mean to sneak peek you guys on that. But he talks about swinging, draw swing. And he says that, he says pretty much that swinging, bringing the club inside causes more of an over the top motion because again, you're getting that momentum, the club head going inside the hands here, and you've got to work it back out in front. So ideally, you want to feel the club, maybe more square down your target line, but then the club is slightly outside of the hands. So that's kind of to your point there, Gene, right of the hands. So if that club head works on the outside, then if you go to the very top, again, going to the Matt Wolf comparison, then that momentum will then want to shallow the club onto the way down. And so then that's why everyone's talking more of a the club head itself working outside of the hands or right of the hands. Again, if you're here, and that's what Matt Wolf has done. So am I a promoter of that? Yes, I think so. I would say that would I make every single person's swing look like that? No, not necessarily. But if you're struggling really shallow, and I'll utilize that as a drill, right, to get the club working outside the hands and get that club momentum coming back inside. It's hard to be perfect in this game. It's easier to get the club head working slightly outside the hands, just on a consistency basis. If you want to be perfect, where the club's parallel, right? It's parallel to your target line, and it's right in line with your hands. That's a little bit harder to get that perfect position, other than just sheer repetitions over and over and over again. So, but definitely inside the hands is in my opinion, they're G no bueno. Right? It always promote. You always got to work that club working back out in front somehow, whether you're coming over the top or whether you're early releasing the club and now you're flipping. So that's no good there, Gene. So hopefully that answers your question there. All right. So again, anybody has any questions, feel free to please ask away as we go on here, and I'll just kind of keep chatting until I see another question come through. Right now, I'm sure that so shallowing is really big right now, as even the game of golf. But of course, our website itself, shallowing is huge. I've had a lot of students here in the online program, because a lot of people, if you're a recent student or a recent member joining here, you'll notice that there's an offer to kind of join my unlimited review program at a would be discounted rate or what have you, as like an upsell to at a full transparency, as you join. And so after you join, one of the major things is the first things that you see is the 20-minute shallowing fix. So I have a lot of new students who say, "Oh, I'm diving through the 20-minute shallowing fix," and I think that's one of the best courses out there on the market that help you really shallow the club. Because what I hear a lot of students before we launch that 20-minute shallowing fix, a lot of people, what they're doing, and this could be you. I see this a lot with actually a lot of better players. What a lot of people do is they get the hands dropping back too far back behind them to shallow the club and just swinging out. So we're not doing. So a lot of people say, I feel like I'm really loopy with my golf swing if I'm trying to shallow it. And then so what people do is they'll get the arms and hand path going out, and then they'll get the arms going underneath, and now you're really stuck. Just so to put it very simply, when we're shallowing the club, what we're trying to do is that we're just shallowing the angle of the club shaft here on the way down. So that's why it's a lot of wrist angles here in shallowing, or right elbows internally rotating there. So just so kind of a full warning, and I know there's a couple of questions in here, but when we're shallowing the club, some people do need to create depth on the way down, right? Some people do need to kind of drop the hands down in that first move. But for the most part, we're not getting the arms to go this way behind us, and then you get really stuck behind you to shallow the club. In fact, actually, what happens there is that if I drop this handle down, that momentum, you can see that momentum actually steepens the club on the way down. So it actually doesn't shallow the club. So that's why when we're going a perfect world, let's say our hands are going on one plane, the hands stay on the same plane, but from momentum, from sequencing that momentum, the club shallows in that first move. And then the second part I was going to say to that, and I'll get to a couple of questions here. The second part is make sure that we shallow the club early. I see a lot of good players, they'll be a little bit steep, and then further along into the downswing, they'll shallow the club later. And you can see that causes me to come out of my posture, and that causes the face to want to twist and rotate open, causing usually getting better players, causes blocks to the right and overdraw. So when they flip their hands, right? So when we are shallowing the club, we're always shallowing the club early in that first move. Shallow the club early here, excuse me, and then you're rotating the hips open and out of the way. Okay, Tommy here. Good afternoon. Do you have any tips for avoiding swaying? Uh, yes. So, swaying, excuse me, there's swaying and there's sliding. Swaying, we're laterally moving this way off the golf ball here, right? Sliding obviously is on the way through. We're sliding this way. Both do the same. So I'm actually gonna go the opposite way there, Tommy. I'm gonna start first with the slide laterally forward on the way down because our cure, right, when we're sliding forward, typically, maybe lead shoulders going forward first. Lead hip is bumping too far outside. Your kneecap is going too far outside on the way down. So what's the fix? Typically, everyone hears this here, Tommy. Everyone says, "Oh, you need to post up on your left side." So posting up, generally means that you're getting this left side, your lead side. I'm sorry. In the downswing, I'm saying in your release, you're getting your lead side to post up, meaning the left knee straightens, doesn't have to, but it straightens. The lead hip goes back and up, and of course your left shoulder goes up, back and up as well. So that's usually the fix for the downswing when we're swaying, right? Now when we're sliding on the way down. Now when we're swaying, it's almost the exact same fix, right? So a lot of people don't realize, okay, well, I'm going to my backswing here. You notice that my right shoulder, my trail shoulder, is obviously rotating up and back, right? My right hip is also going up and back, as well as my trail knee is actually slightly extending. Because old school, right? I grew up in that era where you don't straighten your back knee, you don't straighten your right knee. But if you look at every great player in the game of golf in all eras, it doesn't matter. You'll see that trail knee actually straightens a little bit there on the way back because everybody needs that little bit of mobility. Just like in the downswing, if we're looking for our hips to rotate open and we're posting up, we need that left knee to not fully straighten, but slightly straighten. And so in the backswing, average again on the PGA Tour, average on the PGA Tour is a 10-degree of a straighter trail knee than they were at address. So the common thing, all of that goes back to here, Tommy. The common thing that I see with so many players when they're swaying off the golf ball, well, one, you're trying to be athletic by shifting your weight. That is awesome. We never want to change that. There's always a change. There's always a momentum shift. So there's always going to be a little bit of a sway, I guess you can say, and or slide a tiny bit, but there's not a lot of it. So then the fix there is that when you take the club head back, right, we're technically beginning our weight shift already. But what I want you to try here, Tommy, and again, this is slightly over exaggerated. I want you to pay attention to your right hip to right glute. So your right hip's you're gonna push that right hip back and up, and that right glute obviously is gonna hit the wall behind you, as I say. Now, here's a deal here, Tommy. What it's going to feel like in order for you to accomplish that, it is going to feel like you're going to have to straighten your right knee because if you straighten that trail leg in the backswing, then it's almost impossible to sway. As long as you're still getting a good turn, you have good spine tilt. I want to kind of throw that, spine print out there. Get a good turn in your shoulders and have good spine tilt at address. If you straighten that out, you won't, because the fear of that for a lot of people there, Tommy, when I say, whoa, you want us to straighten our trail knee? Well, a lot of people do is they'll start tipping their upper body forward toward the golf ball or toward a target line, causing a reverse pivot. So my suggestion there, Tommy, is as you do this here, I would video yourself because it's always in this game. It's a feel versus real, right? You feel like you're really straightening it out and you really feel like you're getting the right hip and right shoulder to go backing up and you're looking on camera and you're like, dang, I'm still swaying. So you over exaggerate the motion there that now we're posting up on our trail side, right? We're posting up on our trail side up and back. So then the downswing that counterbalances then to and allows us, to then post up onto our lead side on the way down. So now you're not sliding in the downswing, right? So that's the best thing I'd say. Of course, always making sure. The second part was when we're rotating. I was saying there a second ago, you're rotating. You're always making sure that we're maintaining this secondary spine axis to where your lead shoulder is not rotating too level. Because if I sway slide off the golf ball this way. So if I slide this way, the tendency again is the shoulders to rotate to a level and not have enough side bend of the lead side and the backswing this way. So again, that looks like this, and not enough. Nah. Sorry, I'm in a chair. Been sitting in a chair all day. My back's tight. So hopefully that answers your question there, Tommy. Okay, Gene. Face trumps path. So they say path maybe 2 to 3 degrees to the right. Face sometimes -1 to 2. Best way to address hooking it more than I want. Um, well, it's all if you're hooking it and your path is 2 to 3 degrees to the right, but your face is -2. That means your face is 1 to 2 degrees close to the path. I'm sorry, close to the target. So if it's so in essence, that means that the face itself. Okay, let's just kind of narrow it down here. So if you're swinging 3 degrees to the right with the path, and your face is 2 degrees closed to the target, then that means the face technically is 5 degrees closed. So that's why it's overdrawing and hooking, right? Even though it says 2 degrees face closed, but that's only if it's reading face closed to target, which I think like things like TrackMan, I think it defaults to face to target because that's going to be more of like, okay, the face kind of trumps the path in a way. And that is kind of true because if the face is now, let's go the other way around here, Gene. Let's say if you're saying 3 degrees right, but your face is 2 degrees close to your path. Let me kind of paint a picture here for you. Let's say if your target is at 12 o'clock on a clock and you're swinging 3 minutes right of your path, right? So bear with me here. And the face is 2 degrees close to that path. So now you subtract 2 minutes. So that ball is going to start 1 degree right of 12, 1 minute right of 12 o'clock, and the ball is just going to stay on that line. But if you swung 3 degrees path into out, and the face, excuse me, is let's say really not really close, but this is kind of close, 9 degrees in relation to the path, then that means the face is 6 degrees close to the target, and so then the ball is and depending on how you hit it or whatever, it's going to draw, and the ball is going to start 6 degrees left of your target line. So it tricks your brain thinking that, oh, I'm coming over the top and I'm pulling it. No, you're swinging in and out, but your face is very, very closed. So then the fix is actually, if you think of the mechanics then and saying, okay, well, this is how you translate. This is one thing, by the way, if you're working with an instructor and he has a TrackMan, he has a flight scope, he has a GC, we have a GC quad, or I have a GC quad right here. If he has one of those and he's kind of fixated on those numbers, but doesn't know how to explain it to a mechanic, then it's hard to really what's the purpose of all that? To put it simply, I'm not trying to go that route here or anything. But what I'm getting at is that if we look at those numbers and say, well, then you're all right, Gene, then what you need to do. So let's say for you here, I'm going to assume if you're hooking it, then your face is 1 to 2 degrees closer to the path. So that means your face is actually more closed than just 2 degrees. Your face is actually somewhere between 4 to 5 degrees closed. But your path is good. You're swinging 2 to 3 degrees in and out. That's great. So that means you work on the timing of whatever's happening with your release there, Gene. That's what that means. So we got to identify first, okay, yeah, you're rolling your hands over too much, your Gene, or you're potentially flipping. So even if a little bit of breakdown there in this lead wrist, that can close the face, pretty rapidly and pretty quick. And so that can lead to your hooks. Usually I see that in a lot of good players. And so then we work on things with the hands, the feeling of, we talk a lot about this in the 20-minute shallowing course, where we're twisting those hands down, and the twisting motion, not a slapping, not a throwing motion. We're twisting the hands down, and then we're maintaining that through the hitting area, creating more of a square release. Well, now maybe the face to target is now 0 degrees, 0 or 1 degree open, but you're like, but it still drew. How did it still draw? Because that means the face itself was 2 degrees if your path was 3 degrees. Does that make sense? I'm kind of going on because I'm kind of crazy road here, but I'll roll with it because there's no questions in here. So then, of course, you got to identify from their genes. So we identify that it's not a path thing, so it's not a shallowing thing, it's not nothing like there, but it's a hands thing, right? In your swing, you're relying on timing of the hands, and it sounds like that's what's happening for you there, Gene. If those numbers are kind of speaking to you and that you're not speaking for a friend, right? And so then usually, again, like I was saying there before, and better players, and it's not, Gene, it sounds like you're a pretty good player for path is 2 to 3 degrees into out. Never want to go more than 2 or 3 degrees into out, by the way. Um, then what that means is I'm getting at is that probably I'd work on sequencing and or hips being, making sure your hips are rotated open out of the way in time. So you're not throwing your hands at an impact and you're coming into it with more shaft lean. You're coming into it with more hands ahead and that or sequencing, seeing what's happening there in the way that are you early extending, right? Are you or maintaining posture, as we say? Are you kind of starting with arms only, and then your lower body's trying to catch up? So it all speaks to what, in reality, what the lower body to hips are doing within the downswing when we're getting potentially a little too handsy there at impact, and that's what it sounds like for you there, Gene. So yeah, there's a long answer to your question, but I hope that answered it for you. If that's what's going on, if those numbers are pertaining to your swing and your game. And by the way, I always do. There's a lot of people. I'm very surprised how many people are getting TrackMans and GC quads and all that kind of stuff. Um, you got it, Gene. No problem, buddy. Awesome. Um, But I was saying a lot of people. I'm very surprised. A lot of people are getting GC quads, TrackMan, and flight scopes out there in the world, which is amazing to see. I always highly recommend it for sure. Yes, it's a huge investment. I'll talk to you a couple of factors here. We're flight scope guys. We use flight scope in a lot of our videos. Flight scope is fantastic. If you can't afford the big unit that we've got, I think what they did now. So that's like the big X3 unit. It's like $18,000-$20,000. If you want to invest in the Mevo Plus, now they have a software update that gets you. I highly recommend it because it gets you the club path. If I'm an instructor here, you don't want to be sending all these numbers out. I know what all the numbers mean, and I can kind of diagnose it through all the numbers, and I can build a golf swing from what the numbers say. But the numbers you really want, in my opinion, this is just an opinion here, and a lot of pros I think will agree. Club path. You want to know what the face is doing. So there you go, Gene. So face to path or face to target, either one. Club path, face to path, or the path of the or path or face to target. Swing speed, ball speed, sure, a little bit, but swing speed, dynamic loft, or you can also factor from spin loft, but then you would need angle of attack. So dynamic loft / launch, I guess you can say, but again, you would need angle of and then as well as the last one be angle of attack. If you have those numbers alone, and that's what that Mevo Plus has, if you have those numbers alone, you can say a lot to a golf. So you don't need spin loft per se. Well, you don't. Maybe a golf instructor, if a fitter would. You don't need spin loft. You don't need all these kind of factors. Maybe smash factor. You can see how solid you're hitting it, but you can kind of figure that out on your own. You don't really need to know, solely, smash factor isn't going to tell you necessarily where you're hitting it on the face unless you can see it through like one of our things there. So I highly recommend it for sure. Getting a launch monitor these days, if you're an avid golfer, if you find it worth the investment, that has those numbers to it. And Mevo Plus is the only one right now that does have it, unless you go buy a GC quad that we have there. So if you're spending $18,000 to $25,000 on a unit, and if you have it, great. I like the quad because you don't need the space per se behind you if you're trying to build a simulator. If you're building a simulator and you're thinking about this here, the quad sits right by the ball. You don't need 9 feet behind you like a TrackMan would. You do need the space in front of you though, for sure. Flight scope and TrackMan, you need that space behind you, 9 feet behind the ball, and I think 9 feet or more in front of you so the ball can track. But I like GC quad a lot, and it's easy. It's pop open. You place it right there behind the ball. I don't need a laptop if I'm out there in the sun giving lessons. It's a lot of it's the convenience factor, and it's very accurate. That's why a lot of tour players are going to it because it uses two systems to track the data. It uses reflective dots, so it's getting the actual club data instead of calculating it. It's getting what it through the reflective dots. It's tracking that from the camera system that it has on there, and of course is also using Doppler as well. So we're TrackMan and FlightScope use just Doppler. Quad is using two systems, so that's why, or Foresight is using two systems, which is makes it the most accurate, and that's why almost every tour player, every tour player has both, which is, in my opinion, pointless. But that's just them. So a couple of things here as I'm getting ready to wrap up here the office hours. I would say here, I've got time for about one more question, but again, if you do want to work with me online, I always reserve spots one for former students. I always reserve spots for office hours. If you do want to work with me on the unlimited review program, go ahead and send me an email, robin@topspeedgolf.com. We'll get you activated and we can work together online anywhere in the world. It's amazing. It's a lot of fun. Two, if you want to come in, I'm located here in Orlando, Florida at Lake Mary at Heathrow Country Club here, and beautiful private club. And I work with all students there. So you can shoot me again, email robin@topspeedgolf.com. And then our clinics, our distance clinics are ramping up again. They're a lot of fun. We have it open to 10 people at a time. That is Quentin and I both run those clinics. And those are the first one just sold out. We're going to be opening up the next one here within the week. And we'll keep going through that all the way through April. So make sure that you look at your emails, make sure you are in touch with the emails you get from Topspeed to keep an eye out for those clinics. So other than that, those are my tasks here at Top Speed. So if there's anything else I can help you out with, go ahead and shoot me a note. But I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Thank you very much for the office hours as Quinn is away on vacation. I don't know who's doing office hours tomorrow, but he's back as of next week. Quinn's an amazing instructor. So you're lucky to have him every day during the office hours. And as I'm out there in the sun burning up in this Florida heat. So I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for the questions. Those were very, very, very good questions today. I appreciate those who are in-depth questions. Those are great. Those are fun for me. So best of luck in your game. Get out there, start swinging fast on the golf ball. Work on it hard. And I guess we'll talk to you soon. All right. Thanks and take care.